an Jonig leal, ag marin an saurulin, o valis honan malen na jeshen, ag marin an saurulin. Saurulin an Jonig leal, ag marin an saurulin, o valis honan malen na jeshen, ag marin an saurulin. Babak na baltan imagine an tauri, so heskak nok is she heskak lim. Kalini mai shichabam yaglehal, os ag marin an saurulin. Saurulin an Jonig leal, ag marin an saurulin. O valis honan malen na jeshen, ag marin an saurulin. Tam neshikak shinam salus kos nas piara, piara is kolika is plater nachrin. Ten och graag na hen die hart geschehen aan de pleasure, ons ag marin an saurulin. Saurulin an Jonig leal, ag marin an saurulin. O valis honan malen na jeshen, ag marin an saurulin. Tam jatekan jiri harimona ailius, jatekan chorish kan giga hankrin. Tam hil hana kviskus na koli ma beku, os ag marin an saurulin.
Anita, in your long career as a multimedia artist, would you actually say your title, A Crowded Solitude, is apt for your life?
What I intended with that was to name the solitude of a single mind, how the creative act occurs in the privacy and solitude of a single mind. But when I got through to the end of the book and I wrote the poem that is of that title, I said something quite different. The poem does what they do, it turned. And so, without reciting it, I can just say it said something different. It said that it talked about the whole loneliness of the individual, total isolation in the universe, but it finishes with the intrusion of others and give this grateful isolate a crowded solitude.
No, I found it a splendid notion for an artist's life.
Well, some people will pick up that there was a book by Jack McLaren, My Crowded Solitude, but titles are not copyright, but also by making it my own, a crowded solitude. I'm saying something quite... He was talking about the Aborigines on the beachfront up at Cape York. This is different things, so you can edit this out if you wish, but I'll make the note that I knew that, but I believe this is a different meaning.
Oh, I know the book you're referring to, the Jack McLaren book, but I didn't see a problem with that. Over the
I've
years...
been half questioned, but I stand by my decision.
Oh, I think it's a perfectly reasonable decision. Poets and artists are a bit like bowerbirds anyway. We're allowed to take snippets of this and snippets of that.
Oh, well, certain things aren't copyright. If I'd pinched a whole paragraph of his work, that would be plagiarism.
Yeah, okay.
But I didn't need his work.
Now let's go back a few years. Can you remember the first address you had for living room?
Bridge Road, Richmond.
In Bridge Road in Richmond.
Yes.
And who did, now this would have been 81, 84?
84.
84. Who were some of the poets or entertainers that you saw there or would go there?
Well, some are going to be more notable than others. The important thing about it was not who were the stars, but the fact that every type could get on that stage and read whatever they had or recite it. And you can get your truckie come in his singlet and his little bit of paper and read his poem. So in the other room I have a lot of drawings I did of poets, quite a few. And perhaps, no, none of those are necessarily the stars, shall we say. Tom, of course, ran the Saturday night reading, and that went very, very well for quite a while. But Tom always, and even recently, has a bout of misbehaviour. That can upset the apple cart. He's in Texas upsetting his apple carts now.
Yes.
But he did a lot for poetry. He did a great deal for poetry in Melbourne.
Tom is one of the characters like yourself, because behind the venues that offered spaces for poets were people who, turning out very interesting people such as yourself. Did you find that having an open reading for the verse and verse poets, so everybody, what was the idea of making it open for anybody to read?
Well, I think we have to say that was Tom doing that. But he did it with me aiding and abetting him, certainly, because in living room, this is where I talk about what living room was. I created it to create a space in which the audience was listening. I'd come back from Paris where audiences listen, no matter how much they drank, to a country where in 1984, if the audience was drinking, they misbehaved. And the performer was often open season. And so I wanted to create a space where the audience knew what they were there for. So the coffee and cakes were out the back, open fire. The space was set up as a theatre. I modified that at times, but the seats were lined up, so when people walked in, they go, yeah, we're here to listen. The jazz musicians that played there said, the audience is listening. Yes. But the other thing I did, much to some people's disgust, I eliminated smoking in the space. In the whole building, no marijuana and no alcohol. Now, the next venue that I created somewhere else, I allowed alcohol, a little bar, a limited bar. But I made the right decision in 84 not to allow alcohol. And it was quite impressive when, on one night, Komnenos, Servos, and I threw out a person who thought he had a right to have a whacking big flagon of red out the back. He wasn't amused. And, I have to throw this in. I thought it was hilarious because I took his flagon of red and I'm carrying it and I come through necessarily the stage where Benny Zabel, in his skeleton outfit,
yes.
Do you remember?
Yes, Benny Zabel.
Well, he's doing stuff about peace and not war, and I'm flying through saying, at the time it was Kevin calling him, so he changed to Komnenos later, and I'm saying, Kevin, and this bloke's coming tearing behind me, Shelton Lee, after his booze, grabbing my shawl and tearing it, yes. Oh, he wasn't a nice fellow in those days. He became nicer. He did.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
You know, I'm doing him an injustice. I'm doing him an injustice. It was who in those days was very aggressive and later changed completely.
Aggressive?
My word.
Oh, yes. Because,
Well, you can edit it out.
Oh, yes, yeah. So, you know, I think in the main, with the poets and that, the politics at the time were very rife. It was, the time, by 84, was all these dreadful things happening. But it was the rise of women's liberation in a big way. Black rights, you name it, gays. It was a time of great change. So I think how do you reflect on that, the time of change? Do you think you were aware of the zeitgeist of the time?
Of course. I'd had 10 years lecturing in drama between 1970 and 1980. You can imagine how much political activity there was within even the creative work, in fact particularly the creative work at that time. You couldn't help being aware. And
were you in Europe?
No, Melbourne.
Melbourne, yes,
Uni.
yes.
Melbourne drama, specifically, but involved in other arts. I was exhibiting as a visual artist as well. So no, if you're an artist, you're going to know what's going on, if you're awake. But I had a different positioning, including in the drama department. I was probably 5 years older than the other staff members, not all of them, but enough of them. I also, being English and growing up in the war, never needed the word liberation. I always knew that women could do everything because that's what they did. And you see, while I don't mind people using the word liberation, I never, for me, I mean, and I'd say to my 3 daughters, by all means leave your bra off if you want to. If you want your breasts around your waist when you're 40, by all means leave the bra off. And when one of my students said to me, actually Chris Gregory, said to me, Anita, you're a liberated woman. I don't understand why you wear makeup. I said, I go to a lot of trouble to decorate the rest of my body. Why not my face?
Yes.
He turned up at the drama course for a week with makeup on. I mean, beauty makeup,
yes,
not just clown makeup.
What a character, Chris Gregory.
Yeah, he's still my friend.
Oh, good. Well,
yeah.
Do pass on my regards when you see him. Any of the other people, poets or musicians, like there was Pam Sidney. Did you meet? Mimi. Yes.
Of course I remember her. And Lauren's up
Williams.
here, her daughter.
Yes.
Is up here now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But you see, I remember in Jammin, Lauren doing her first poem in public. But she says it was Living Room and myself that gave her first reading. I don't actually remember that. But I saw her as a 17-year-old in Jammin with Pamela Sidney, her mother. And it's quite wonderful to see how they develop, and I'm not being patronising. Thing is, you see, and this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine, when you see the work of very young and you think perhaps it's not great, you better support it because over the next 10 years they're going to be winning awards. They're going to be doing very well. And what starts slowly can bear fruit beautifully. Yeah. But Pamela Sidney, yeah. Do you remember White Feather?
Yes, very well. I'm fond of that woman too.
Carmel Bird is up here.
Oh, yes, I know Carmel's up here. Yes.
Well, I've got an old poster I did for her, a publicity sheet. God Smokes Drum. Do you remember God Smokes Drum?
Yes.
That was Living Room.
Okay, and Carmel Bird was a regular reader there?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you think of any of the other older female poets like Joyce Lee or
Joyce
Barbara
Lee, of course.
Giles, Judith Rodriguez? Any of those read there, or did you have a feature?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Did you?
And Glenn Tomasetti would come and sit in the audience. Yeah, she would. She was wonderful. But I mean, I've got visual stuff in there of Malcolm
Brodie?
Malcolm Brodie, Stephen Whiteside.
Yes.
He was and is a fully qualified GP. I've got some publicity material I did for him. Patrick Brian Cox.
Yes.
Remember him? Mm-hmm. He used to sit in the front row and he would nod off. And I'm trying to remember, who was it that was stark naked on the stage? Probably Shelton, I'd say. Standing on the stage of the living room, stark naked. Patrick's in the front row in the centre, nodding off so that his face is getting closer and closer to the poet's special bits. And I used to think with Patrick sitting there, nodding off, I think, because he was quite elderly, I'll say that for the camera.
Yes, he was.
Very elderly. And I used to think, it's okay, Patrick, if you want to die here, it's fine. You can do that. Yeah, but we got every type, didn't we?
Yes.
That's what I liked.
I agree. Part of the thing that attracted me was Tom's open policy to encourage all. It was very good. Did you stay at that venue, that address in Richmond the whole time, or did you go to other venues with the living room? Did it?
I went everywhere.
No, what I mean is, did you have other venues?
Oh yes, yeah. See, living room closed. I've got a letter in there that explains to people what happened. Living room closed. I had just spent $1,000 on new seats, and the council was doing stuff with me for which I would have to fight legally, and I didn't have the money. And I have to throw in here that not one single performer or audience member came forward to back me up in any kind of legal battle. Yeah. So I said, being a probably practical person, supply and demand, perhaps there is not the demand for living room that I think there is. And so I closed. But after that, it's sequenced now. I was asked to run a stage in Costa Brava in Brunswick Street, and that was Costa Brava being a Spanish restaurant.
Yeah.
So I set up a stage and brought in, I can say, the first Spanish music and Spanish flamenco dance to that street. The other restaurateurs would come and cram in after they'd closed and see why was it all buzzing in here. And there you go, it buzzed all right. So after that, I opened the workhouse in Victoria Parade, Collingwood.
Okay.
And
this is late 80s?
That didn't have it, sorry?
Late 80s?
Oh, 90s.
90s, it's already the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay. The workhouse.
You don't remember it?
No, but...
a lot of it was theatre. One of the difficulties in Melbourne is to have enough small theatre venues, small performance venues at all. Our head of drama at Melbourne had said to me, Melbourne doesn't have enough small venues.
Isn't that interesting? Wow.
So that was good, it was effective.
With all that happening in your life, what was your main source of creative expression then? Was it your painting, your poetry, the sculpting, the puppets? Because I know you were doing puppet theatre too.
Main source, that was the outcome. That wasn't the source.
The outcome is what...
They were all the outcome, the effect. The source is me.
I was so impressed with your wood sculpting. It
Well,
strikes me
I've
as-
done the wood carving since high school.
You have.
Yeah.
Because of all the sculpting, carving, wood attracts me very much, and I was so impressed to see that you had such a close relationship.
You want me to talk about puppetry?
I'm interested in that very much because it's not a common art form.
Oh my goodness me.
It hasn't been in my life.
No, I know. But it's been, since the caves, puppetry and mask has always been there, always been there. I used to sometimes think there was somewhere in various parts of the world that didn't use puppetry. As time went by, I discovered that there wasn't. Puppetry, when you think about it, it's such a great communication tool, whichever form you're using. The word marionette is Little Mary. It was used to teach religious stories, the nativity in the churches.
Wow.
Yeah, the marionette. And in France, that means all puppetry. Here, it means string puppetry. Yeah. So I wandered off there. But look, puppetry embraces all the art forms. It embraces visual art and sculpture, movement, dance, voice. You name it, puppetry includes all of it.
Yes, it certainly does. That's why I find it. It must be taxing actually to be able to make the figures, the characters, work out the script.
Puppeteers are damn clever. And around the world they've got every form. And not all puppeteers make their puppets, but a heck of a lot do. The main reason you don't see them quite often is that they work alone, a lot of them. They're often self-taught, like many poets. And they can be dreadful. There was a chap in New Zealand, I created actually the puppetry magazine.
Okay.
I can show it to you. For UNIMAR, the international group for puppeteers, Union Internationale de la Marionnette.
And when was that roughly?
Late 70s, throughout the 80s. By the 90s, I was invited to represent Australia in Washington. So it never went away, actually. There wasn't. But what happened when I left the drama department, where I had been doing large group performances with students, I said, okay, now what you haven't done, you haven't worked solo. So let's develop that, let's do that. And for a long time, I've had a one-person cabaret show with puppets and masks and visual theatre generally, and all poetry-based.
Unreal. Poets and puppetry.
All my scripts are poetry.
Yes, terrific. And we'll wrap up a bit now. What I'd like is, let me see how to pose this. You're a multi-talented artist. Have you ever had any moments in your life where you didn't know what to do next?
No.
I thought so.
No. There are things I don't do until I've got something to say. I think my central skill or love is communication. And it takes whatever form is convenient or useful at the time. So I won't write a poem unless I've got something to say. It's invariably a first line, and sometimes it's a last line. But until I've got something to say, I don't write. Some of the poets will say, I'll make myself write every day. Why? You see? But I came to realise that my sculpture was invariably a visual poem. Can I turn around now? Will the cameras permit that?
Yes.
This piece here, that's called The Dance. And what it's about is, they're not dancing, Work that out. What they're doing, they're trying to make contact, and they're not really quite getting it right. I wanted to make a series of works that were for the millennium, and I have been doing that. And that is about how internationally, interpersonally, interracially, we're trying to make that contact, and not getting it quite right. You see, and behind you, I won't point for you, lately when I do a drawing or painting, it's genre art. It's describing what people are doing in their ordinary lives. So history painting is one thing. It describes what people did, say, in war, or in great houses, or in law courts. That's history painting. But it's always a major event that's being described. Genre is like Bruegel, even Van Gogh. What ordinary people are doing when they're doing very little. And that's what I'm interested in now. I regard it as a form of history painting. So the large piece behind you is people in a cafe, doing nothing really. But you see, they interest me. They're each quite different people, inside the room and outside. Bathroom there, above the sink, there is an agricultural show drawing. I've done the farmer's market, or children getting on the bus for school. The playground where nobody's playing, they're all on their mobile. Right? And even immediately behind you is one I did when I was 17, just people on a tram. And I've got them together, those two, because they're actually doing the same thing, describing ordinary people doing very little. And I could have sold that little one time and again.
If you had a young artist, young poet come to you and asked, is it worthwhile pursuing an interest in poetry when there's no money in it?
That's a loaded question, isn't it? Everyone has to be accountable for themselves. If money's your measure, you should go for money. My mother said to me, with your intelligence and skills, you should be making money. I said, so Mum, what do you think would happen if I focused on making money? She said, well, you'd make money, I suppose. I said, well, you can tell then that I'm not focusing on that. Now, I've had money, but I've spent money on trips overseas alone, travelling the world, with only a sausage bag and a briefcase for my poetry. I've spent money on attending puppetry and mask festivals and performance, and I have spent all my money, and I can't get the grin off my face. You know, if and when I finally get round to falling off my perch, I will be able to say I have done a lot.
I could only concur of all the poets I know. You have fitted so much into these years.
But look, I'm living like a queen.
Oh, yes.
And I've got nothing.
Oh, well, nothing of the material baubles, but you've...
Oh, I've got things I like. I
yes.
bought that not so recently, a Davenport, a period piece. I buy things if I want them.
Yes, so it's not like you have nothing. You actually have a very rich
You know what I mean.
aura, and that comes from being... okay,
the word you're looking for is fulfilled.
Yes. Would you say your cup runneth over, or you've just had...
No, don't let it run over, it would waste. No, I tick along quite satisfactorily.
Well, for an artist that's been so involved with so many people over so many years, it's been really a pleasure just talking to you, just to hear your voice and reminisce a little about those great years. So thank you very much, Anita.
Thank you.